we now do have time for some Q&A. So there is a roving mic at the back. So if anyone does have any questions, please do pop up your hand. Anyone? Okay, well, I'll get the ball rolling then. Oh, we do have a question at the back. Sorry.
This is for Adaptivate. What's the main challenge for producing your gypsum replacement at scale? I imagine you need a lot of investment or a lot of industry buy-in to do that.
Yeah, investment's a key thing. We've worked very closely with one of the government catapult centres, a manufacturing technology centre, to design production and to model it out and de-risk as much as possible. And we've done that. As I said, there isn't an off-the-shelf solution to it. We know that bits of it we borrow from different industries. We're very similar to the gypsum industry at the front end. We're similar to the concrete particle board industry at the back end. And various bits of it turn out we're very close to the food industry. We've looked at technology around deposition from flapjacks. It's what you take. So really, it's taking existing technologies and putting them together. We've done a lot of work around de-risking to make those all happen. Because the product is very, very low energy to manufacture, we don't have a great need for gas. We don't have any need for high heat or high pressure. The flip side of that is we do need space to store while the product cures. Concrete traditionally cures over a 28-day period. We're around about a 3-day period, but that means obviously everything you produce and when you produce it in scale, you've got 3 days worth of stock curing before you can send it out or finally palletize it. So yeah, it's a challenge getting it all put together. Investment is the big thing. We've got a lot of interest to it from this country and from overseas. But when you're asking people to invest a lot of money into a new technology, you know, they're hard to find. Okay.
Thank you very much for that question. Any other questions from the audience? No? Yes, just here.
Hi, thanks to everyone for the presentations. It's fascinating stuff. There's a question from Arthur from Skyroom. I wondered, the roof space that you're building on, I mean, I don't know what the London market for roof space is, but what impact does the pricing of that have on your program?
Yeah, good question. So the primary thing that we do, and kind of where I started my talk, was by saying that, yeah, we don't have a housing crisis, it's a cost of land crisis. So it's really driven by the unit economics or cost, or the reduction of land value in acquiring roof space. In London at the moment, there's not, sadly, an active market in buying and selling rooftops, and so a lot of it is trying to work with large councils, housing associations and big existing landlords to try and get them to understand the value that they already have on that they're not necessarily recognising, and then find ways to, through we form joint ventures with councils, for example, and then we then develop it out, raise the financing, deliver it, and then split profits from the development in terms of that. So, but you're exactly right that the key insight from it is trying to significantly reduce that land cost as part of the equation, and doing so. But we do so rather than going to a liquid market for rooftops, working with people to say this is what you've got in your estate and what it could be worth were we to work with you on it.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? I do have one for all of you guys. You've all set out very, very ambitious visions, but absolutely doable visions for what it is that you want to achieve through the different products and services and businesses you're developing. What challenges or barriers have you encountered so far on that journey, either from kind of, you know, if you're still at the conceptual stage or to actually getting on the market?
Hi. One of the challenges we found is that many companies are willing to look into circular economy and they want to do it, but then when you're further in the process, it's sometimes difficult to get an investment for that, or to get them to look into research and development to go to that next stage. So I think these are at the moment we really encounter in the building environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll just answer quickly. I touched on it in the presentation, but the biggest barrier that we faced originally was perception and language, and the sort of concept that if something had had a previous life in one description or another, that somehow it had a lesser value, which when we look at the value of antique furniture or classic watches or classic cars, it seems that in some industries secondary life seems to give something greater value, but in so many others that's not the case. So that's, as I say, that's why we've been trying to change perception around that, as well as generating the market for secondary use and making it normal. But a lot of people seem to think it's of a lesser value for some reason.
Yeah, definitely. And can I just ask you then as well, Anne, just touching on that, by changing those perceptions, was there certain tools that you used or certain language that you used to help your clients understand that it was valuable and there was a reason behind it?
There's a few things that we have done and are doing. For a start, the Renew Centre, everyone originally called it a workshop. I'm like, it's not a workshop. Let me take your furniture to the workshop. By calling it the Renew Centre, we're not talking traditional language. We're giving hopefully a more positive language around that. We've made it a visitor experience. If you're trying to persuade a facility manager who maybe have hundreds of positions that actually we can fit out their office to the same standard as new, we want them to come to the facility to see the staff. So we've made it a visitor experience. We've used positive language. As you can see, we spend a lot of money on photography and marketing so that when we're putting the products out there, you can get a better value for them. All of those things, and then sharing our story as much as possible. And obviously the work with Advanced London is very helpful in that, because once people can touch, feel and see something, then we've convinced them. But they're the kind of things that we're doing to sort of raise awareness and try and change perception. So.
Yeah, that seeing is believing.
Yeah.
I mean, we've used a lot of primary sustain refurbished furniture in our office, and we bring people into the space. They can't believe that the furniture's not new and that it's all been completely reused or refurbished or upholstered in some way, which is really, really fantastic.
And just to finish, we had a non-believer visit about 2 weeks ago who he said, my sustainability manager's been trying to get me down here for over a year, and he manages a UK-wide estate for a very large corporation, and he left with the words, why would you buy new? And I said, I'm going to be quoting you on that for quite some time, but that's unfortunately what it took.
Yeah.
So
yeah, brilliant. Did you want to add to then the initial question then, Jason?
Yes, going back to the initial question, I think one of the challenges we found being in the construction product environment is the legislation, the testing, because when you do something new, you don't fit into the nice little boxes that everything fit. And when you've got established products which are led by large manufacturers who lobby and who sit on different government bodies, and I'm a little bit poacher term gamekeeper on this myself. I did that before. You've got standards which are written, so when it comes to CE marking, actually we sit a little bit in this camp and a little bit in this camp and a little bit in this camp, and actually we surpass some of these or we surpass some of these, but then we've got to write a whole new standard for it. So when it comes to things that there's effective legislation set out for, a lot of the time it's been written by some of the biggest companies there and makes it slightly harder for new things to enter.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something we've seen across with some of the other organisations we support. Another organisation we work with, we're using chicken feathers to develop an alternative to plasterboard. That particular process in itself of actually getting it to market so it would be certified was so lengthy and so costly, they've actually pivoted away from that and are now using the ideas that they had around how that material could be harvested and the properties it had to develop packaging, because it was a much more easier market to enter. So it definitely is interesting, and hopefully that won't discourage other innovators from trying to innovate within the built environment. Was there anything else you wanted to add on that one then, Ehab?
Sure. I would reiterate exactly the challenge that Adaptivate is going through with legislation for our mycelium insulation, for example. We know that our mycelium insulation can achieve 3 times premium Kingspan insulation values in terms of energy efficiency, and we're going beyond Passive House, but in order to get it into market we have to achieve the accreditation, and the accreditation process is very costly, but also there aren't any standards that apply to our material, because most of the standards out there are there to test the toxicity of materials, and ours are completely natural and grown. So that's a huge challenge. The other one, again, is also something that Adaptivate has touched on, where we're scaling into a 3,000 square meter facility in October, and that a jump is quite a big jump from where we are now, which is 4 shipping containers in Shepherd's Bush. And in order to do that confidently, we have to make sure that the right machinery is purchased, that the right equipment is used, and we're having to borrow and mix and DIY machinery out of the food industry, the agricultural industry, just to make it work. So this is an absolutely new field, and we're finding the challenges are in the perceptions that have added to the legislations and the equipment that we currently have access to.
Yeah, and just thinking about the legislation and regulation that each of you must kind of go through because you're developing something new that hasn't really been done before. Do you think there's enough awareness then from the government for kind of what some of the innovations that are coming through in London and right across the UK? And is there something more that they could be doing to try and understand how they can facilitate that?
Yeah, there was a really important point made in the talk I was in yesterday about the Dutch government, how they allow for test legislation to be put in place over a certain period of time just to test out new ideas and new methods. Something like that would be absolutely transformational here. And also we're working closely with BSI and standard generating organizations to create new standards to allow for bio-based materials to be more accepted.
Does anyone else want to add to that particular question? Anything else that they think government might be able to play a role in and help in with kind of bringing your innovation to market or help it at scale?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what's been discussed around procurement.
Yeah.
I mean, the government has put out sustainability targets and objectives they'd like to have, but they don't translate them into what that may look like or help provide confidence about how you'd specify something. There's some really, really good examples coming through now when you've got confident and proactive people in local and public sector who will take on a procurement scheme that no one's done before. But in terms of then taking the advice from one area and spreading it around more widely, I still see more barriers than I do something, and anyone enabling it. And the problem is as well, often even with the efforts to make it easier for SMEs to engage through the procurement process, which they've been trying to do, they still set a ridiculous amount of barriers in terms of things that you have to report on, provide information on, and it's just not possible when you're a smaller organisation to tick all of those boxes. So I feel like there's a lot more that could be done, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we try to do at LWARB is really kind of help local government, particularly within London, really understand what their role is and what place they can have in terms of really driving forward circular economy. And procurement is kind of one of those really large opportunities, and we're definitely seeing kind of more of an interest now from local authorities to kind of drive that forward and implement that within their own operations. Was there any other questions from the audience? Yep, here we go. And then hereafter.
I have one question. Is at the plasterboard equivalent, just wondering what its fire properties are.
Okay, so we've developed everything to be equivalent to plasterboard. So at the moment we're looking for the board to come out with a 30-minute rating. So the same as plasterboard on that. Again, it will be something that will be tested as part of a system. We've done some work, and again, actually, this comes interestingly back to the point with some of the legislation. We've been talking to Warrington Fire, or their latest name, who first of all looked at it and said, "Oh no, we don't think because you've got mineral here, we don't think you'll need testing." This was on the plaster, this one. Until we said, no, we do, and they sent us all this document saying, no, you don't. And we got to the last page and said, no, see, it does say there that we need it, and it's that little bit of misunderstanding, but primarily what we're looking to do is to be no worse than the incumbent products, only to be better. So that's one of our criteria, minimum 30 minutes.
And I have a sequel. I am here at this exhibition as an environmental activist, but in my working life I spent most of it working for the British Board of Agremont, which was set up 50 years ago to cope with innovation in construction. And its aim is to evaluate materials on their own merits against what is required of them, regardless of whether there is an existing standard. So I could suggest that two of the panel should perhaps visit the BBA's stand while they're at this exhibition, because I think you might find their services of use to you. It produces an approval which describes the material for whatever use is defined on its own merits, and it's useful to specifiers as well.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, yeah. Thanks for that. It's a great comment. We have spoke a bit with the BBA. We've been doing a bit with the BRE. Obviously, they share the same site and they cross over on some areas. and we've done a certain amount of testing through themselves as well. Again, the one thing is trying to get to the right point, getting the final recipes before you invest all the cost in there. That's always the big thing that comes out. But no, great point. And that is something we are aware of, and I'm looking at the nods and thinking we're both aware of that. So.
Thank you very much. We just have another question here.
Hi, EAB's stand on the biome has got two boards, one made out of orange peel and the other out of coffee grounds. It's beautiful, the mind-blowing. But have you any extra sort of data or narratives on the orange peel and the coffee grounds boards?
Sure. So that's the LWARB material that I spoke about, and it's the organic binder mixed with those waste streams. Currently, we're achieving comparable mechanical strength to things like MDF. So dry lining is one of our biggest applications, and we're also able to use it in product design and things like that. We're going to be releasing some spec sheets within the next 4 to 5 months. We're currently undergoing the testing, and again, we're trying to do it as affordably as possible, but also make sure that we are not putting out anything that we're not 100% sure of.
Great, thank you. I think we've got time for one more question. If anyone else from the audience would like to put one forward, no? I just have one last one then for each of you, if that's okay. We know that you're all doing really, really exciting things in this space. Is there any other exciting developments that you've come across that you think is really going to innovate in the built environment space, and what those opportunities might be?
The excess material exchange is something that I think I'm a huge fan of. They've done amazing work in such a short time. And yeah, you should look into it. It's basically like a dating site, as they describe it, for waste streams and buyers of waste or suppliers of waste.
Yeah, I think I was on a panel with them this morning, and I think they're at this Amsterdam stand. So if you hadn't had a chance to check them out or speak to them, I definitely would recommend it.
Actually, I think you've already mentioned one of my favourites, which is Aero, which was taking the chicken feathers. It was insulation. They were looking at using it as a binder in that market region. I think it was great what they were trying to do. It was a waste stream there was plenty of abundance of, and other than thinking of stuffing pillows with it, I thought that was a great one. Other than that would be the people who are doing the seaweed into packaging, into food packaging. Yep. Great way of cushioning it, and a great way of getting rid of it as well. So I think there are some fantastic things happening at the moment out there.
Yeah, definitely. So those two organisations that Jason's mentioned, one's AeroPowder, and they've now produced a new product called Plumo, which is thermal packaging. And then the second one is OHO, so they are the little water bubbles, which is also fantastic, and another one of our organisations in our network.
I was going to mention OHO, so you've stolen my thunder, but I love what they're doing in the seaweed packaging. It's absolutely brilliant. So as that's been stolen, I'll mention something that I'm involved in that might be actually helpful from a very practical perspective. Over there, I'm on the circular office stand with business in the community, and they're pulling together loads of suppliers that are doing this sort of thing into an example. And I think if you're interested in good ideas, they've got a whole directory in there of some, which alongside what you're doing is a great way to capture a list of potential people that you can work with. So
yeah, and it's super practical. I think some businesses really struggle to understand what it is they could do, but nearly every business has an office, so it's such an easy thing to kind of think about what you could do differently within that office space and how you could implement circular economy design.
Well, it's getting harder when you're just at the end of the line, I think, because most good ideas are stolen. But I liked, because I think EHAB's had the same kind of ideas I had, so I like to stick with the fellow Dutch people, if I may say, because one of the other ones who are here are stone cycling. I think it's also a great initiative that looking at waste, that you can do something with it, that you can recreate bricks that you can use in many, many ways in buildings. And I think that was a really great initiative, and I'm really pleased to hear that they were here, and also very successful. So I would like to opt for that one.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a really interesting one. Waste aggregate's a real issue within the sector, and they've been able to take something and make a valuable product from that that's actually upcycling rather than downcycling, which is something you so often see. And lastly, Arthur, hopefully you haven't been too stuck then, something to think of.
Well, I agree with all of the above. My slightly kind of contentious ending point on this is that I think what things like this show is that there's an abundance of phenomenal ideas out there. The hard thing is how you can execute and scale those ideas. I'm particularly mindful of this because I've just come from, I'd say, the kind of the off-site modular industry. This was touted as innovation in Roman times, building things off-sites, and then more recently in the UK, post-war being off-site, and the fact that it's still not commonplace is not down to it being an innovative, complex idea, which I think we've heard 5+++, and seen thousands of phenomenal ideas out there. The hard thing is how you take those ideas and make them everyday and commonplace. And so I'm going to not answer your question with that, but say it's not what the cool new idea is, it's how you can make that part of everyday life and at scale.
Great, thank you. Well, I would just like to say thank you to all of our amazing panelists that have joined us here this afternoon and taken their time out to share their visions and what they see as some of the opportunities within the sector. So I hope you'll join me in a round of applause for all of the panelists.